Welcome back. In this video we'll examine the second act of the 3-act structure. Since the second act is the longest and most involved of the three, this will be the longest single video in the series. The second act is by far the longest with about half the page count. This section is also where many authors fail. Even after a strong start, the second act is where the story can seem to drag if the author isn't careful. Here we see the story consists of a rising action to the midpoint on the way to the crisis and the pre-climax at the end of the act. In the first act, there was little if any character development. We were just setting the stage. Now we focus heavily on character development. When the hero starts down the road of trials, he's ill-equipped for the journey. The second act is all about the hero equipping himself for the eventual confrontation with the antagonist in the pre-climax and climax. The rising action. In a real sense, this is what the story is all about. The hero has accepted the call, or been press-ganged into service, and his allies join him on the adventure. This is what I like to call the movie poster moment. Imagine that your story was made into a movie. What would the movie poster look like? For most movies, the poster is a snapshot of this moment. Let's take a moment to look at the poster for The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and follow along with this. What do you see? The first thing you see is Frodo with a forlorn look on his face. Why? Because he's been press-ganged into service as the ring bearer and set upon a perilous journey he wasn't prepared for. You see Gandalf looking morosely over his shoulder because he knows he's just thrust someone who's like a son to him into the greatest peril. Strider is just over his other shoulder, sword in hand, preparing to protect Frodo from the armies of darkness that pursue him. You see the supporting cast, who will be introduced later in the act, in the background. And in the foreground, shrouded by mist, you see the 9 ringwraiths charging from Minas Morgul. This is a perfect snapshot of the beginning of the second act. The hero is ill-equipped and on the run. Everything has turned from tranquility to chaos, and the hero starts encountering obstacles. They've crossed the threshold into the new world, and the reality of their situation is beginning to sink in. It's do-or-die time, and the heroes are learning how to navigate the new world. This is also where you can introduce new characters and develop the ones you already have. Throw friend and foe alike into the crucible and see what they're made of. Do your heroes have hidden potential? Show it. How villainously determined are those shadowed specters on horseback? There's nothing like a game of cat and mouse in a darkened, mist-filled wood to find out. This is also a good place to flesh out the conflict a little more. Really show what the stakes are for the heroes. The midpoint. This is a place of relative safety for the heroes. In some cases, this is known as the meeting with the goddess, although the goddess doesn't need to be female at all. It could be female, male, a child, a place, a gift, tool, knowledge, or anything else to help the hero on their journey. It's also where you introduce your plot twist. In a way, this place is a mirror of the ordinary world of the hero. This is where questions asked by the hero in Act 1 are answered, and, in a sense, where the hero gets what he's been searching for. But it turns out what he expected from the quest is different from the reality he achieved. The midpoint is where your story turns on your hero. They thought they were doing well up until this point, but new revelations show they still have far to go. Until this point, your hero has been a passenger on the journey. But now, understanding the gravity of the situation, they take an active role and begin guiding their own destiny in the story. If your story has romance, this is where you start it. Until now, your characters have been running for their lives, at least metaphorically. They've had more important things to focus on to this point, but now they feel like they can let their hair down a bit. Develop those characters and explore those relationships to their fullest. They'll be going into the climax soon, and won't have time for much else when they do. In the Fellowship of the Ring, Rivendell is the midpoint of the story. That would make the Council of Elrond their meeting with the goddess, and Elrond as the goddess. Here, under the umbrella of the elves' protection, Frodo reconnects with Bilbo and learns more of his history with the ring. He learns what kept Gandalf from his meeting with him at the Prancing Pony, and he also learns the history of the ring and how it must be destroyed. But, remembering that what he expects from the quest is different from what he achieves, his journey isn't over yet. He was expecting to deliver the ring to the elves, let it be their problem, and be done with it. His worldview changes during the council when he sees how the ring corrupts the hearts of the council members. He realizes that if the ring is to be taken to Mordor, he is the one to do it, since he knows the hearts of the others will be too easily corrupted. Before we continue, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ding the bell so YouTube will notify you when I upload new videos. And don't forget to check the description of this video for book recommendations as well as all the tools and resources I use in my writing and video production. Back to the video. The B story. This is also known as your subplots. Your hero isn't the only one with aspirations. Your side characters have wants of their own. Aragorn wants to reforge the blade that was broken. Boromir wants to see glory returned to Gondor. Gandalf wants to see Sauron destroyed for good. Your story will seem very one-dimensional if you focus on only one story arc. The second act is when you develop all of your characters, even your secondary characters, and give them smaller arcs of their own. And you don't need to focus on just one. You could have a B story and a C story and a D story and so on. You don't want to overcrowd your story, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. Remember, stories aren't written, they're edited. If a side story arc doesn't work, just trim it in the edits. The pre-climax. This is the final push before the hero confronts the main antagonist in the Act 3 climax. The interesting thing about the pre-climax is that it's often several scenes longer than the climax itself. It's the pre-climax that builds in crescendo, preparing for the release of tensions in the climax of the third act. The actual climax may only be a single scene. This is also where the hero may lose key allies in an event known as the Dark Night of the Soul. This is where the hero loses someone that he and the reader thought was untouchable. Before you can close the act, your character must suffer the worst loss possible. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the pre-climax is the Battle of Hogwarts. You might think this is the climax, but it isn't. Over the next collection of scenes, the tension builds as Harry, Ron, and Hermione scour the castle for the last Horcrux as the chaos of battle deepens around them. This increases the pressure of the situation and allows tensions to build for the climax to come. The Dark Night of the Soul moment comes in the aftermath of the battle before Harry confronts Voldemort, where he sees the dead of the battle laid out in the Great Hall. These include Remus and Tonks Lupin, Fred Weasley, and several other students and faculty. This is where the cost of the battle is counted and the antagonism shows his true power. In Star Wars A New Hope, Luke rescues Leia, but Obi-Wan is killed in the process. And that's it for the second act. In the next video, we'll examine the third act before moving on to look at some alternatives to the three-act structure. I'll see you there. Until next time, good writing and Calamus Gladio Fortior.